What is up YouTube? I'm Royal, I'm rank 1 Wildrift, and in this video we're breaking down the best patch Riot has released in a while. And they've finally done the change that I've been yapping about for the last few years. I think I mentioned this in every stream of mine, and that's nerfing jungle, and specifically nerfing hyper farming junglers. For the last little while, for the last 3 years, the meta in Wild Rift for junglers has been the exact same. You full clear, you gank while your camps are down, then you full clear and gank while your camps are down again and again and again. It made little to no sense to try to make strategic movements, as in counter ganking or trying to win some tempo for your team by just going into a lane and pressuring the enemies, because if you weren't farming your camps, you were falling so far behind because jungle camps gave so much gold. So it made absolutely no sense to do anything other than farm. But now Riot has finally nerfed how much gold the junglers get from just farming. So now the opportunity cost of doing something else is a lot lower because jungle gives less gold. So if I'm playing the game as a jungler, I can finally do some strategic thinking. So even though this is a jungle nerf, I think most good junglers will benefit from this change. Because now if your jungle fundamentals are strong, you can actually play the game and benefit from your fundamentals. And you're not just AFK farming and then stat checking the enemies, which is what jungle has been for the last few years. So this is a very good change in my opinion. I've always praised Wild Rift for their gameplay, but this is the last piece of the puzzle to make Wild Rift a truly great gameplay wise game. So I'm extremely glad that they did that. So how is this gonna affect the meta? And this one I'm gonna break down slightly. So junglers that heavily rely on farm and just stat checking the enemies, right? Like Shyvana, like Hecarim, like even Zed, Talon, all those just hyper farm heavy champions that just rely on just overwhelming the opponents by getting really fed, right? There's a lot of champions in Wild Rift where if they're really fed, they're really hard to deal with. Nyla is another example, right? Those champions are gonna be pretty hard nerfed by this change, because they can no longer get ahead by just farming. They're gonna have to make solid plays, they're gonna have to get kills, they're gonna have to actually play the game for once to get fed. They can't just hyper farm and be useful. Kayle jungle will get hit pretty heavily of this, right? So hyper farming junglers will definitely take a step back, and then junglers that play more for utility, right? Champions that provide more things to a team and can play this low economy play style will benefit a lot. The champion that will probably benefit the most out of this change is a Mumu, the best jungler in the game already. And he's not receiving any nerfs this patch, which is crazy by the way. So a Mumu, for example, is going to heavily benefit, because in the mid game, a Mumu wants to focus on using his ultimate to set up plays. His jungle farming starts being pretty slow anyway, right? It's not as efficient. He's a low economy jungler. He doesn't need a lot of resources to be useful. Another example is Nunu, right? Nunu doesn't require a lot of resources to be useful. So this change is gonna push a lot of these ganking junglers to be a lot better. Jarvan is another example, right? All of these champions that are great at ganking, great at utility, will be a lot stronger. And the champions that rely on hyper farming and carrying the game through just stat checking the enemy will be quite a bit weaker. So this is a very welcome change in my eyes. So to break it down, right? After 730, junglers will no longer receive bonus gold from taking down monsters. They used to receive 20% bonus gold. So after minute 730, junglers are pretty much getting 20% less gold from farming. Huge change. And their farming will also be a little slower in the mid game. It's gonna be pretty hard for junglers to clear their jungle in the mid game, so it makes a lot more sense to gank rather than farm, because it takes longer to kill the camps, right? So a very welcome change in the jungle. Thank you Riot Games for finally doing something about the jungle. This was probably the best change I've seen Riot make in a while. I cannot praise it enough. Now let's look at the balance changes and how that's gonna affect the meta, keeping in mind the current jungle meta that's likely gonna change a lot this patch and probably completely shift the course of Wild Rift, right? Once a change like that is made, it will start heavily affecting the meta. You might not notice it right away because people are not just gonna swap champions. Like if you're a Shyvana main, you're not gonna randomly stop playing Shyvana, right? But we're slowly gonna see how the meta adapts with these changes, and I'm very curious to see if my predictions are right about hypercarry and farm heavy junglers being weaker. So starting off with Sion, this is a very welcome change. Sion in general, his main issue is that his crowd control is very unreliable. All he really does is just be this tanky, beefy meat, you know, that just takes hits. That's all he really does in the game, because with his passive he's able to get thousands and thousands of HP. And they're buffing exactly what he's good at, right? So now he'll be even tankier. So he's gonna take longer to deal with, they're gonna be harder to kill. So if your team is kind of lacking these like DPS champions, like a DPS AD carry, or a mage that can DPS, right? If it's mostly focused on burst, Sion can really be an issue for a lot of teams to deal with these buffs. So I think this will definitely help him find his spot a little better. And just be this tanky mess of a champion that he's meant to be. So I like this buffs. I think Sion's quite weak, so any buff does help. Garen. So Garen's damage has been falling short. The nice thing is that they're buffing his base damage. So this is going to make him strong in both the AD and the tank build will be a lot stronger. I think currently the best build for Garen is a bruiser AD build, right? I don't think the tanky build is that good. However, this change buffs both the AD and the tank build. So it's a nice change. Garen honestly needed some buffs. I know that he's super easy to play, but he's been pretty weak after the latest nerfs that they did to him. So I think this is a very welcome change. Leona, again, as you saw on my tier list for last patch, has been quite weak. Enchanter champions are just way too strong right now. And the counter to Enchanter champions are champions like Leona, right? They can go in and lock them down and one-shot them. So any buff to Leona is welcome, and this is gonna make her quite a bit tankier. This is a very, very nice change in terms of tankiness. Keep in mind that you are maxing your second ability first as well. I guess it doesn't make a big difference here in terms of maxing. A bit on the magic resistance and the armor, right? Because level 1 you only get, or in the rank 1 you only get 5 extra armor and magic resist. But when you max it, you get 20 more. So since you max it first, this is actually like a decent buff in terms of stats, right? It seems like they've just buffed the base armor and the base magic resist. You get an extra 20 armor magic resist. And you also do 20 extra damage, which is not bad. It's a decent buff. I don't think it's enough to really push Leona into god tier or anything, but this will make her a lot more competitive as a support pick. So Wukong nerfs finally, right? Especially his sustain in lane, which is the main thing that's getting nerfed here, is gonna be a little weaker. He was really OP in the Baron lane. I think this will keep him as a decent good pick, but definitely allow for some more counterplay and allow for other champions to be able to lane against him without just automatically losing lane. And the base damage on his third ability is going down by 10. This also will affect him in the jungle, right? Clearing the jungle is already a little weaker because of the nerfs, and this is gonna slightly nerf his clears again. However, I do think Wukong is one of those champions that can benefit from a low economy jungle as well, because of his ultimate giving so much utility and his base stats being quite high. So he will still be able to perform well in a low economy jungle setting, which we're probably gonna be seeing going forward because of the jungle changes. So overall, a very welcome change. Viktor has received some pretty major nerfs, right? I'm surprised to not see Ryze receive nerfs, but instead see Viktor receive nerfs. Obviously, I think some Viktor nerfs were warranted, but it's crazy that we're not seeing Ryze in this patch and we are instead seeing Viktor, who I think is considerably weaker. I think Ryze is by far the best mage right now. These changes will probably push him a little lower than Syndra and Orianna, who are the other two mages that are extremely good right now, right? So his first ability actually loses quite a bit of damage, right? You lose 15 damage at the max level. You do max it second after your third ability, so it won't impact his early game too much, but you're also losing 5% AP. So his mid to late game damage, which is what Viktor is really about, is gonna go down by quite a bit. His laser the first part will lose 10% ability power, and the second part will lose another 10% ability power. So overall, he's lost 25% ability power scaling, while also losing some base damage on his first ability. So his damage is going to be way weaker in the mid to late game, which was where it was overwhelming. So they're nerfing the thing that he has been the best at. I think these nerfs are pretty severe. I don't think he's unviable or anything like that. I think he will still be an A tier, maybe S tier champion after these nerfs. But I think at this point, after these nerfs, there's no real point to pick Viktor over a champion like Syndra right now, who fulfills a similar purpose. So I think Syndra should be your go-to mage after these nerfs, if you like more damage focused, and Orianna if you like more utility focused, and of course Ryze if you can ever get him if he's not banned, right? Sivir nerfs, very nice to see. Sivir has been the second best ADC for a while now. I'm surprised to not see Corki in this patch, in these nerfs. Corki has somehow dodged nerfs, but Sivir has got nerfs instead, which is a similar case with Viktor, right? They're nerfing the second best champions in the world, but not the best ones. So this will definitely slow down Sivir's automatic wave clear, right? He's able to clear the wave way too quickly, and she's able to do way too much damage in team fights with her second ability. So this is definitely a nice change. It doesn't seem to be too impactful. I'm looking at the damage numbers. I guess it is cut in half on rank 1, but it's only 4 damage on the last rank, and the attack damage seems to only be 2%. It's a decent nerf. Definitely won't completely push her out of the meta. I think she'll still be one of the top tier ADCs, but it's a decent nerf to not completely remove her from the best ADCs, while, you know, making a little more, allowing for more counterplay. I'm surprised not to see Corki here. Moving on to Blitzcrank, and these are some very welcome nerfs. Blitzcrank has been way too strong for way too long, and it's mostly because of his hook doing way too much damage. 320 damage, a champion that's like level 6 is way too high for a singular ability. You would pretty much grab any squishy champion and they would like die just from your grab, and then your team could easily follow up and kill them. So it's very nice to see 15 damage shaved off on the last rank. Very good change. And the base health, 720 is absurd, by the way. So it's nice that they've brought it down to 660. I think this overall a really good nerf. Blitzcrank will now, in my opinion, be in a spot where he's viable, but not overwhelming. And that's the spot that Blitzcrank should always be at because of how oppressive his first ability can be. So very good changes. This is a change I don't understand. I really don't understand. Jinx's early game is not good. Her early game is extremely bad, right? And nerfing, like, her base AD is already extremely low. 50 AD is a very low base AD, and putting all the way to 54 is just sad, honestly. And I don't think that shaving a single second, right, a 10% CD nerf on the Flame Chompers makes up for the 4 AD she has just lost, the 4 base AD. I don't think Jinx deserved any nerfs, to be honest. I think if they wanted to weaken her early game, there's probably a better way to go about it, but I don't think she really had a weak early game, so I think this is just a very unnecessary nerf. I'm sure it's probably targeted more in low elos, because I definitely don't see Jinx played in high elo at all, not in pro play or anything. So I think this is a very, very weird nerf, and I'm not very happy about it, but it is what it is. And these are the changes for this patch. This might seem like a small patch, but the changes are massive, especially the system gameplay changes when it comes to the jungle. If you guys enjoyed this patch breakdown, please leave a like so I know to keep making more. Comment down below what you think the new meta will look like, and now that the jungle has been completely changed, right? This will allow for more utility focused junglers, and which will allow for more hyper carries in other roles. It's gonna be a super interesting jungle change, so please comment down below what your opinions are. Let's figure out this patch together and help each other in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe for more Wild Rift content.